We live in an age of perpetual motion, a relentless, 21st century hustle. We wear busy as a badge of honor, a testament to our self-worth. Our screens are ablaze with notifications. Our minds are a chaotic symphony of unfinished tasks. We have been conditioned to believe that multitasking is the ultimate productivity hack. It is the core operating system of the modern professional. But what if this widely accepted dogma is fundamentally flawed? What if the very act of juggling multiple tasks is not a key to efficiency, but a psychological and cognitive trap? Consider the modern office worker. They are drafting an email while listening to a podcast, occasionally glancing at a presentation, and simultaneously monitoring 3 chat threads. They feel productive. They are doing a lot. Yet, at the end of the day, their most critical work remains stalled, mired in superficial progress. The cost of this constant cognitive switching is profound. It's measured in delayed deadlines, careless errors, and, perhaps most damagingly, in a deep, corrosive fatigue. This is the central mystery we are investigating, the illusion of multitasking. For decades, we've pursued speed and volume, optimizing for input rather than output. We have mistaken motion for progress, and scattered attention for versatility. The consequence is a global epidemic of burnout and diminished quality. But there is an antidote, a simple, yet revolutionary practice that has been all but forgotten. It's a return to singular focus, a disciplined dedication to one task at a time. It is called monotasking. This is the secret to getting more done, not by doing more things at once, but by doing one thing exceptionally well. We will peel back the layers of our multi-screen, multi-project world to uncover the science and the history behind this powerful, forgotten discipline. We will meet the pioneers who are bringing it back and the people whose lives it has transformed. The journey begins with recognizing the deep, systemic failure of the multitasking myth. It starts with the simple, profound commitment to be present with a single task. The results, as we shall see, are nothing short of transformative for personal life and professional achievement. To understand the power of monotasking, we must first document the chaos of its antithesis, the hyperconnected, multitasking workplace. Our stage is the modern environment, where success is often defined by responsiveness and availability. The moment a worker sits down, they are besieged by digital demands. We introduce Dr. Evelyn Reed, a cognitive neuroscientist specializing in attention economics. Dr. Reed has spent 2 decades mapping the brain's true capacity for parallel processing. She argues that what we call multitasking is, in reality, task switching. This is a critical distinction. Task switching forces the brain to shut down the neural pathways for one task and fire up those for another. This switch has a measurable, physiological cost. We also meet Mark Chen, a former Silicon Valley CTO and a self-proclaimed, recovering multitasker. Mark built his career on the principle of maximum concurrency. He believed the more threads he managed, the faster his company would grow. He now shares the story of his spectacular professional implosion, directly attributable to the errors and oversight caused by perpetual task switching. His turning point came after a critical software bug, traced back to a line of code he wrote while also attending a video call and responding to urgent messages. Our third key subject is Clara Diaz, an artist and writer who champions the practical application of monotasking. She sees it not just as a productivity tool, but as a path to deep creativity. Clara contrasts her current, focused work routine with her past attempts to write a novel while managing social media and household responsibilities. The resulting work was fragmented and lacked depth. These three subjects form the pillars of our investigation: the scientific proof, the corporate cautionary tale, and the personal, creative renaissance. Their stories and data will guide us through the historical rise of the multitasking ideal and its subsequent, silent failure in the daily lives of billions. We begin to chart the landscape of this cognitive battlefield, defining the terms of engagement and identifying the true enemy, the relentless, fragmented demands of the digital age. The initial problem of modern productivity is a paradox. Technology has given us unprecedented tools to manage time, yet we feel more time poor than ever before. The core mystery is why the human brain, which is the most complex machine on Earth, consistently underperforms when subjected to the demands of simultaneous high-level cognitive tasks. The cultural obsession with multitasking really took root with the proliferation of personal computers and the Internet in the late 1990s and early 2000s. The term itself gained positive connotations. It was marketed as a feature of the new generation of operating systems, a way to maximize machine efficiency. Humans, naturally, began to emulate the machines they used. If a computer processor could run multiple applications at once, surely a human brain could handle multiple tasks. This adoption was a cultural shift, not a scientific one. There was no widespread study validating the human capacity for concurrent deep work. Dr. Reed's early research began to expose the flaw in this analogy. The computer is running tasks in parallel, but the human brain is not. When the brain attempts to switch between two complex tasks, like writing a dense report and analyzing financial data, there is a switch cost. This cost is the loss of time and mental energy required to re-establish focus and context. It is an interruption that compounds over the course of a day. Her studies showed that for highly complex tasks, the cumulative time lost to this switching can amount to 40% of a person's perceived working day. That is nearly half of our time spent not on the work itself, but on the mental transaction of moving from one task to the next. This constant switching also leads to something called inattention blindness. When the brain is split, it misses critical, but seemingly peripheral, information. The mystery is solved: the human brain cannot effectively multitask. It can only cycle through tasks rapidly, and that cycling is what drains our cognitive resources. The problem, therefore, is not a lack of time, but a profound misallocation of our most valuable resource: focused, singular attention. The first major clue in the case for monotasking came from an unlikely field: aviation psychology. In the 1970s and 80s, researchers studied pilot performance under stress. A pilot's job is, arguably, the ultimate high-stakes multitasking scenario. They must monitor instruments, communicate with air traffic control, manage fuel, and navigate, often simultaneously. The crucial discovery was the concept of attentional filtering and resource allocation. It was found that when a single, critical event occurred, an engine failure, for instance, the most successful pilots immediately shed all non-essential tasks. They did not try to process the emergency alongside routine communication. They executed a rapid, forced simplification of their cognitive load. This was an organic, survival-based form of monotasking. Their brains prioritized the single, most important task for survival, automatically discarding others. Dr. Reed's team later applied this principle in laboratory settings, using functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, technology. They observed the brain activity of subjects performing tasks under both multitasking and monotasking conditions. Under the multitasking condition, the fMRI scans revealed a frantic, diffuse pattern of activity, with multiple areas of the prefrontal cortex lighting up inefficiently. The result was a high volume of neural energy expenditure but a lower rate of accurate task completion. However, when subjects were instructed to monotask, to focus exclusively on one complex problem for a set period, the brain activity pattern shifted dramatically. The scans showed a deep, sustained activation in specific, relevant neural networks. This was the signature of deep work. This singular focus resulted in faster completion times, significantly fewer errors, and, surprisingly, a subjectively lower feeling of mental strain. The crucial discovery was a neurobiological confirmation: the brain is wired for depth, not breadth. When we monotask, we are not resisting our brain's nature, we are finally aligning with its optimal state for high performance. This singular clue revealed that the secret to getting more done was not a management theory, but an inherent biological truth. To fully appreciate monotasking, we must contextualize its origins, which predate the digital age by centuries. The practice is not a modern productivity fad, it is the default, most effective mode of human concentration, documented by philosophers and craftsmen alike. We can trace its intellectual roots to ancient traditions of focused meditation and craftsmanship. Think of the medieval scribe, spending an entire day illuminating a single page of a manuscript. Their focus was absolute, their output a testament to singular attention. The Industrial Revolution, however, introduced the concept of specialization and assembly line efficiency, which paradoxically laid the groundwork for task concurrency. The machine was optimized for multiple, repetitive motions. The human worker was increasingly seen as an extension of the machine, expected to manage multiple inputs. The context truly shifted in the 20th century with the rise of knowledge work and the invention of the telephone and, later, email. These technologies introduced the expectation of real-time interactivity, making uninterrupted, deep work a radical act instead of the norm. The corporate culture of the 1980s and 90s celebrated the power lunch and the dealmaker, who could sign papers, take calls, and brief assistants all at once. This was the popular romanticization of the hyper-busy individual, cementing multitasking as a symbol of professional prowess and high value. Mark Chen's corporate journey perfectly encapsulates this context. He started his career in a company that awarded bonuses based on the volume of projects simultaneously managed. He describes the constant pressure to have a visible backlog, to appear to be spinning multiple plates, even when the plates were spinning slowly and poorly. The true origin of the problem lies not in the technology, but in the corporate context that demanded superficial breadth over profound depth. The technology was merely the enabler, the culture was the driving force. Monotasking, therefore, is an act of rebellion against this manufactured culture of superficiality. It is a return to the proven, ancient methods of mastery. It seeks to re-establish the value of the master craftsman, whose quality of work is a direct result of their singular, uninterrupted attention. The pushback against monotasking is significant, fueled by two powerful, conflicting theories that dominate modern business strategy. The first theory is the agility mandate. This posits that in a fast-changing market, the ability to pivot and context switch rapidly is not a flaw, but a necessity for survival. Companies fear that committing an employee to a single task for an extended period creates a bottleneck and makes them too slow to respond to market shifts or client demands. The stakes here are high: perceived competitiveness and market relevance. Business leaders view focus as equivalent to slowness. The second conflicting theory is the efficiency model, which is rooted in maximizing resource utilization. If a worker has even a moment of downtime waiting for a file to load or an approval, they must fill that gap with another task. This model views cognitive idle time as a form of waste, and multitasking is seen as the necessary mechanism to achieve 100% utilization. Dr. Reed confronts these theories with data on the true cost of cognitive friction. She argues that the agility gained by constant switching is superficial. While the worker responds quickly, their solution is often shallow, leading to downstream corrections and more work. This creates a cycle of false urgency and fragmented effort, where the system is constantly busy fixing its own self-inflicted wounds. The escalating stakes are not just in productivity, but in mental health. The pressure to maintain a state of hyperresponsiveness leads to a chronic release of stress hormones, contributing to anxiety and decision fatigue. This is the hidden crisis of the multitasking economy. The pursuit of maximum efficiency is actively eroding the cognitive capital of the workforce. Clara Diaz notes the difference in her creative output. When she attempted to be agile with her writing, jumping between chapters and editing, the novel's voice became inconsistent. Monotasking allowed her to commit to a single narrative voice, resulting in a cohesive, high-quality final product that required less revision. The documentary frames this as a choice: the appearance of agility and efficiency through busy work, versus the substance of deep, high-quality work achieved through singular focus. For every individual we profile, there was a point of no return, a critical failure that forced them to abandon the multitasking model. For Mark Chen, the former CTO, his point of no return was a catastrophic, six-figure loss of revenue. While managing a high-stakes, simultaneous negotiation and a major system upgrade deployment, he failed to verify a single, critical parameter in a server configuration. This small, easily preventable error, caused by what he terms cognitive tunnel vision from switching, cascaded into a complete system outage during the busiest trading hour. The financial and reputational damage was immediate and devastating. It was the moment he realized the cost of the 40% switch penalty was not just personal time, but corporate viability. This failure was a concrete demonstration that the human brain's capacity to filter and prioritize breaks down entirely under concurrent high-stress demands. For Dr. Reed, her personal point of no return was a period of severe, debilitating burnout while attempting to manage her research, teaching load, and a complex grant application. She recognized the symptoms in herself: constant low-grade anxiety, inability to recall simple facts, and a pervasive feeling of never quite finishing anything. She realized her own professional life had become a living laboratory of the failure she was studying. The scientific theory became a personal imperative. This realization led her to commit to a monotasking protocol for her most critical research, resulting in a massive leap forward in her data analysis and publication rate. The point of no return is often marked by a moment of profound, undeniable cognitive exhaustion or failure. It is when the individual realizes that they are no longer controlling their schedule, defined by external notifications and concurrent demands, is controlling them. This realization forces a structural change, a radical commitment to a new way of working. It is the moment the addict admits their habit is destructive. The commitment to monotasking is not a gradual adjustment, it is a declaration of independence from the tyranny of the endless to-do list. The midpoint twist in the story of monotasking is the revelation that it's not simply about doing one thing. It's about re-engineering the environment to support that singular focus. The initial, naive approach to monotasking is often to simply try harder to focus, but this ignores the external architecture of distraction. The true revelation is that our digital tools, the very things meant to help us, are designed with an incentive structure that actively punishes focused attention. The business model of most digital platforms, social media, email clients, and news sites, is built on maximizing user engagement, which is synonymous with maximizing user switching. They thrive on the interruption economy. Every notification, every badge, every snippet of new content is a carefully engineered trigger to pull the user away from their deep work. The twist is that the individual struggling to focus is not suffering from a personal lack of willpower, but is fighting against billions of dollars of optimized, psychological engineering designed to fragment their attention. Dr. Reed's team discovered that the mere presence of a smartphone on a desk, even if turned off, significantly lowers a person's cognitive performance on complex tasks. The brain expends measurable, unconscious energy resisting the urge to check the device, an ongoing low-level mental taxation. Mark Chen's firm, after adopting a monotasking model, had to make radical policy changes. They introduced deep work hours, where all internal chat systems were disabled. They mandated the use of analog notebooks for meeting notes, removing screens from the conversation. The revelation is that true monotasking is a holistic strategy involving personal discipline, environmental design, and, crucially, corporate policy. It's an acknowledgement that you cannot simply meditate your way through a barrage of pings. You must physically and digitally barricade yourself against the architecture of distraction. This makes monotasking not just a personal productivity hack, but a revolutionary management philosophy. New evidence from both neuroscience and psychology continues to bolster the case for singular focus, revealing a profound and positive psychological impact. The most compelling new evidence concerns the concept of flow state, as originally defined by psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Flow is a mental state in which a person performing an activity is fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus, complete involvement, and enjoyment in the process of the activity. Neuroimaging studies show that the flow state is virtually impossible to achieve during task switching. It requires an unbroken commitment to a challenging task. Monotasking is the necessary precondition for achieving flow. When a person is fully dedicated to one task, the self-monitoring parts of the brain temporarily quiet down. The result is not just higher quality work, but a deeply satisfying psychological experience. The psychological impact of monotasking is a drastic reduction in anxiety and guilt. The multitasker lives in a constant state of low-grade anxiety, due to the perpetual awareness of all the tasks they should be doing but are currently neglecting. By contrast, the monotasker has clarity. They are operating from a deliberate choice, knowing that the task in front of them is the only thing that matters for this specific block of time. This removes the cognitive burden of having to constantly reprioritize. Clara Diaz describes this shift in her writing life as moving from a feeling of being constantly late and rushed, to a feeling of deliberate, meaningful work. She says the work she produces in a 2-hour, focused monotasking block is often superior to a full, 8-hour day of distracted, concurrent work. Furthermore, new data suggests monotasking improves long-term memory formation. When the brain is focused on encoding information without interruption, that information is filed and stored more effectively in the hippocampus. Conversely, information learned while multitasking is often fragmented and difficult to retrieve. The new evidence makes the case that monotasking is not merely a path to better productivity, but a fundamental practice for cognitive health and deep psychological satisfaction. It allows the brain to function in its most harmonious and powerful state. Despite the mounting scientific evidence, the truth about the toxicity of multitasking faces persistent attempts to suppress or discredit it, primarily from entrenched business interests. The suppression is often subtle, rooted in the systems and metrics that govern corporate life. The primary suppression mechanism is the tyranny of the open calendar and instant response. If a company measures an employee's value by their availability for impromptu meetings or their sub-5-minute response time on chat, they are structurally suppressing deep work. Monotasking requires deliberate, large blocks of uninterrupted time, which is directly at odds with the culture of immediate availability. The second form of suppression comes from the tools themselves. Software developers face resistance when trying to design minimalist, single-focus applications. The market demand, driven by the multitasking culture, is for all-in-one platforms that integrate communication, project management, and content creation into a single, highly distracting interface. Mark Chen faced significant internal pushback when he tried to institute his deep work hours policy. His middle managers resisted, arguing that if they couldn't immediately contact their teams, they would lose control and efficiency. The fear was not of lost productivity, but of a loss of managerial visibility and the perceived sense of control that comes with constant monitoring. The truth is suppressed because true, deep monotasking requires a fundamental shift in trust that the work will get done, and done well, even if the worker is temporarily invisible. Another attempt at suppression is the co-option of the term. Companies now market themselves as multitasking friendly, meaning they have systems that manage the switching process better. This is a subtle way of conceding the problem without changing the core behavior. They are optimizing the distraction, not eliminating it. This resistance shows that monotasking is more than a personal habit, it is a challenge to the established, visible, and metric-driven norms of the modern economy. It is a quiet revolution against a cultural system that has a vested interest in keeping its workers perpetually scattered. The pursuit of monotasking excellence involves a constant confrontation with internal habits and external pressures. This is where the practice truly becomes an active skill. The first confrontation is with the internal dopamine loop. Our brains have been trained to seek the mini rewards of quick wins, sending an email, checking an item off a list, seeing a notification pop up. Each action releases a small burst of dopamine. Monotasking, by contrast, requires delaying that gratification for a much larger, but later, reward, the successful completion of a significant project. The pursuit is the act of deliberately resisting the urge to switch, even when the current task becomes difficult or boring. Dr. Reed guides us through the 10-minute rule, a confrontation technique. When the urge to switch arises, the monotasker commits to staying on the current task for just 10 more minutes. This short, deliberate delay is often enough to push past the resistance and re-engage the flow state. The second major confrontation is with the social obligation of instantaneity. Clara Diaz, the writer, recounts the struggle of telling friends and colleagues that she was unreachable for 2 hours every morning. This was often met with suspicion or even offense, as if a lack of instant response was a personal slight or a sign of disrespect. The confrontation here is with the cultural expectation that being a valuable team member means being instantly available. The successful monotasker must set clear, unapologetic boundaries. This involves training colleagues on when and how to expect a response, using tools like email autoresponders to manage expectations. The confrontation is one when the quality of the deep work output begins to speak for itself. When the focused work delivers results that the scattered work could not, the external pressures begin to recede. The pursuit of monotasking is, ultimately, a journey of self-reclamation. It is the active choice to prioritize quality, depth, and mental serenity over the chaotic, externally driven demand for constant, superficial busyness. As the narrative culminates, the final pieces of the monotasking puzzle fall into place, revealing a complete system for cognitive dominance. The solution is not just the act of focus, but the strategic scheduling of distraction. Mark Chen's successful turnaround at his company was built on a system he calls focus sprints and batch processing. The concept is simple: all deep, complex tasks are grouped into 90-minute monotasking sprints, with a deliberate, 15-minute break in between. Crucially, all low-value, high-distraction tasks, emails, chat messages, and phone calls, are batched and reserved only for the designated break periods. This is the final key: monotasking does not eliminate distraction, it domesticates it. It gives the brain permission to engage in fragmented communication, but only on a defined schedule. The brain learns to trust the system. It knows that the urge to check email will be satisfied at the 15-minute mark, making it easier to ignore the urge during the 90-minute sprint. Dr. Reed's neurological data confirms the efficacy of this batch processing. She found that when people tackled 30 emails in a single 15-minute block, the cognitive load was initially high but quickly stabilized. The brain's executive function remained intact. However, when those 30 emails were checked one at a time over a 3-hour period, the constant switching caused cumulative, systemic damage to the focus center. The final pieces connect ancient wisdom with modern technology. Mindfulness, singular focus, meets technology control, notification management. Deep work, high-value tasks, meets batch processing, low-value communication. The complete system provides not only an antidote to multitasking but a superior, sustainable method for high-performance creativity and productivity. The chaos is replaced by cadence. The truth revealed is that multitasking is the primary inhibitor of both high-quality work and mental well-being in the modern age. It is a myth that has cost us our concentration and our peace. The primary conclusion is definitive: the human brain is a sequential processor for complex tasks, not a parallel processor. Every attempt to force parallel processing through task switching comes at a steep, non-recoverable cost in time and cognitive function. This is a scientific fact, not a matter of opinion or work style. Monotasking is not a lifestyle choice, it is an optimized cognitive state. It harnesses the brain's natural capacity for deep, sustained focus, leading to a profound difference in the quality of output. Quality over quantity: the monotasker produces less volume of superficial activity, but a much greater volume of completed, high-value work. Reduced error rate: the elimination of the switch cost drastically reduces the likelihood of costly, focus-induced errors. Sustained energy: by reducing cognitive friction, monotasking conserves the brain's finite supply of executive function, leading to less fatigue and professional burnout. The shift to a monotasking mindset begins with two simple, actionable steps. Define the most important task, MIT, at the start of every day. Identify the single task that will have the greatest impact and commit to it first. Digital isolation: for the duration of the MIT, physically and digitally remove all potential sources of interruption, especially the phone and chat applications. The story of Mark Chen, who saved his company, and Clara Diaz, who wrote her best work, proves that this isn't just theory. It's a pragmatic, highly effective strategy. The truth is a simple, uncomfortable one: we must slow down and focus to truly speed up and achieve mastery. The secret to getting more done is to deliberately choose to do less at once. The legacy of the monotasking movement is only just beginning to be written, with modern ties emerging across education, corporate leadership, and personal development. In the aftermath of the initial adoption phase, companies that embraced a monotasking philosophy report sustained gains in deep work output and significantly improved employee retention. The culture shifts away from who responded fastest to who delivered the best, most complete solution. The new modern tie is the concept of focus as a strategic resource. Corporate leaders now view their employees' uninterrupted attention span as a limited and precious resource, to be allocated and protected, much like a budget or a server capacity. Educational institutions are also beginning to integrate monotasking principles. Universities are teaching students the science of task switching to combat the epidemic of fragmented study sessions. They are learning that an hour of focused, digital-free study is exponentially more valuable than 3 hours of study interspersed with social media checks. The legacy of this idea is moving from a personal hack to a core competency of the 21st century professional. It is now understood that in a world of infinite information, the ability to filter and focus is the true competitive advantage. The shift is visible in the design of new productivity software, which is now beginning to offer features for focus modes and digital fences, acknowledging the user's need for isolation. This marks a departure from the earlier model where the software itself was the source of distraction. Monotasking is also deeply tied to the growing movement for digital minimalism, a philosophy that advocates for using technology deliberately and consciously, rather than letting it use us. The aftermath of this truth means that anyone who continues to champion or enforce a culture of constant multitasking is not operating from a position of efficiency, but from ignorance of established cognitive science. The future of productivity belongs to those who master the art of singular attention. We have journeyed through the chaos of the multitasking myth and arrived at the clarity of singular focus. Concluding summary: monotasking is the strategic allocation of one's full cognitive resources to one task for an uninterrupted, defined period. It is grounded in the neuroscientific fact that the human brain incurs a high, costly penalty when rapidly switching between complex tasks. By eliminating this switch cost and embracing batch processing for low-value communication, individuals and organizations can achieve deeper work, higher quality output, and profound psychological benefits like the flow state. It is a necessary rebellion against the architecture of the interruption economy. However, a lingering mystery remains, one that defines the ongoing struggle of the modern worker. Why, even when the data is clear and the benefits are obvious, is the pull of distraction so incredibly powerful? The mystery lies in the cultural and personal addiction to perceived progress. The small, quick hits of dopamine from clearing an email or checking a message are more immediately gratifying than the difficult, slow, and often frustrating progress of deep work. The reward for monotasking is delayed, the reward for switching is instant. The final challenge is not just to understand the science, but to cultivate the emotional discipline to choose the delayed, meaningful reward over the instant, superficial one. Monotasking is a perpetual practice, a continuous commitment to cognitive intentionality. The secret to getting more done is found not in clever tricks or new tools, but in the sustained, deliberate choice to be present, to be focused, and to do one thing at a time. The work is never truly over, for every day, the battle for your attention begins anew.